Welcome to the Vitamin Professor podcast, brought to you by VRM Media, publisher of Vitamin Retailer and Nutrition Industry Executive magazines, in partnership with Nutraland USA. I'm your host, Gene Bruno, Professor Emeritus of Nutraceutical Science and Chief Scientific Officer of Nutraland USA. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to help educate the dietary supplement industry about the science of nutraceuticals and other relevant topics. If you like what you hear and see, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, who happens to be somebody that I've known for decades. He used to work with a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Burke. He is a naturopathic practitioner. He's a master herbalist, a lecturer, an author, and media host, and an industry insider for 44 years. One of the few people in the business that has been around just about as long as I have. Jeffrey is the Director of Education for Kokora Life and the host of the Honest Health podcast with Jeffrey Burke. Jeffrey was the host of his long-running Natural Products radio show for 42 years and recently ended that show to start his new podcast, which I had the pleasure to be on recently, so check that out. Over his career, Jeffrey's worked in all levels of the industry, from sales, management, product formulation to education. Jeff has worked with the industry's top companies and the best minds in the natural products industry on his radio show. Today, as the Director of Education for Kokora Life, Jeff has the incredible opportunity to combine his passion for training and education with his passion for working towards a healthier planet, supporting regenerative agriculture. Now, Kokora Life is a regenerative organic certified company that just received a gold rating for the quality of its soil, the only agricultural medicinal herb farm in Costa Rica to receive this designation. Kokora will soon be launching the first of its high-quality products aimed to support our health and well-being, as well as the health and stewardship of the planet, soil, and environment. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Gene. How are you?
I am excellent. I am excellent. As I mentioned before, I've known you for so many years, and I know if you get involved in something, it's got to be something good. So I just want to start out with my first question to ask you a little bit, to ask you this. What is Kokora's mission?
I think the mission of Kokora, and of course, Rick Scalzo, who is the founder. A lot of people know Rick from his years at Gaia Herbs. He founded Gaia Herbs for many, many decades and sold out of there 4 or 5 years ago, and has been developing this amazing agricultural farm down in Costa Rica. And like you mentioned previously, to your point about the gold rating of the soil, his whole idea behind this is not only to produce products of quality and integrity, because he's done that already many, many times, but it's also about us taking the responsibility and understanding both the relationship we have with our planet and our soil, and realizing that we're in a situation right now where we have got to start making some changes, both in the area of insects, birds, soil health, because, everything we take from our soil is only as good as the soil itself. And he wants us to start taking responsibility. Basically, the whole idea is if you have a bank account and you do nothing but withdrawals and you never make deposits, you're going to end up in the negative. And that's kind of where we're heading, because just because you're growing crops and vegetables and herbs and all that stuff doesn't mean we're getting the complete quality that we should be getting at this time, because we have a tendency to not put things back. And his mission is to, have people realize that we can all work on this together, and small changes can bring us vast monumental differences.
Awesome. So that leads me to my next question. Is organic and regenerative the same in the context of farming?
Well, they have an overlapping nature, which I think is very important. I know you and I both, of course, through the years, I remember when we would, throw parades for organic, because, at that point in time, we understood that organic was the way to go. And if you could afford it, obviously it was more expensive. The whole idea of eating organic was, the thing to do. But the idea of organic today has kind of a different definition. Organic still means it doesn't have in it or on it the things that we don't like: pesticides, preservatives, chemicals, and those things.
Right.
But the problem is many organic farms around the world are growing in soil that is no healthier than the chemical-based farms 20 miles away. So we have to remember that even though you may be growing organic, are those fruits and vegetables really better for you? Yes and no. Yes, because they don't have the pesticides and the chemicals, but it doesn't mean that they naturally automatically bring you better value of nutrition. Now, that being said, regenerative is a way of working the soil and allowing the soil to hold more carbon and allowing the soil where you're not over tilling the soil. You're not using chemicals. So there's that overlap, but also you're making sure that there's ground cover and that you're rotating the crops correctly,
Crop
and
rotation,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
This
So
is everything
important.
old is new again. This used to be done like decades ago. People that with their own independent farms used to follow those kind of practices. And
Well,
that's what he's doing there. That's awesome.
Well, and really helping to support something called the soil food web. And the soil food web is basically where you're trying to create better, deeper, like a tissue of the soil to allow the roots to be able to permeate down, because so many times we have the soil where the roots go down and it's so hard and compressed that the roots end up going sideways and we don't get the full benefit of the water and the moisture, because we've got the nematodes, we've got the protozoa, we've got the fungi, we've got the bacteria. These are all parts of this live part of our soil. We all know about the microbiome in our guts, and we know about our body's microbiome that we've been really working and focusing on for the last, decade. People are understanding having a healthy gut, healthy body, healthy gut, healthy mind, healthy cells, by having a healthy digestive system. It's the same thing. So people say all the time, well, we have to do everything because things don't always grow on their own. But think about a forest. Forests are self-sustaining. There's nobody out there with a hose, and there's nobody out there with a water can, and there's nobody out there, putting the miracle grow and things on the trees and everything. It's self-sustaining. So it obviously knows what it's doing. It builds these beautiful soil food webs where things that decay, they become reabsorbed into the soil, and the roots are deep and they're tapping the moisture and they're getting the benefits. So what we're trying to do is with regenerative, not lose our topsoil, not lose the beneficial part of the soil and let it blow away. The old way was just to go in there with these big machines and turn everything over. And at the point, we thought that was the thing to do. But today, using plants in between the crops, and making sure that we're using nutritive mixtures that we put together that nutrify the soil, and with that crop rotation, to your point, and things like that, that's where regenerative makes a difference, because whatever you're growing in soil is only as good as the soil. If you're growing in regenerative soil, you're going to grow things that are better, stronger, more flavorful, more beneficial, and more nutritious.
That makes a great deal of sense. And when you were talking about that, mentioning the microbiome, a lot of people don't realize that the soil has a microbiome too. In fact, there are some probiotic organisms that have entered dietary supplements that are actually derived from the soil, you know, and some with very good research on it. And so it would seem very clear, just as we want to have a good microbiome internally, we want our soil to have a good microbiome because they're producing food and herbs for us, and we want those to be healthy. And so I like the fact that regenerative farming helps to do that very thing. So that's some great information. And I also just mentioned that that herbs are one of the things that are grown in the soil. And I know that you guys are growing a lot of different herbs. So let me just kind of shift the conversation a little bit to herbs and ask you some questions about this. Both of us have a background in herbal medicine. So I want to ask you, how would you say that the use of herbs over the last few decades changed? And do you think it's more accepted and more common today than it was?
Interestingly, if I could tie this to a quick story, if you don't mind, I remember
Sure.
back in 1981, I was working at one of our stores that we had, which was in the Westwood area. And I was
Yes.
there after hours helping them doing inventory and stuff, teaching someone there in the store. And I was new to the industry, but already I was overseeing a whole bunch of stores. So that being said, it was about 7 o'clock at night and they had a knock at the back door. And I opened the door, and it was two doctors from UCLA, because that's right where we were. And they came in, and she said, "Oh, I got your bags all ready for you." And so they paid, and then they left. I said, "What was that all about?" She goes, "They're doctors from UCLA. They come after hours because they don't want their colleagues to see them in the front of a health food store." And that was my first kind of introduction to the friction between, standard medicinal medicine physicians, and our industry. Now, that being said, I think we've had a lot of ego in this country, and I think we've come a long way. But when you really do your research, whether it's on ashwagandha or turmeric or holy basil or bacopa, and you study them from around the world, and you see that these have been used in one way or another for hundreds, if not thousands of years, with amazing scrolls and papers and books that have been written about them, you see that these are not new, but sometimes when they break into our industry, they're treated as if they're right off a press and they're brand new. And we have to realize that some of that apprehension, I think, has changed. I think also a lot of people are tired of using strictly pharmaceuticals. I think a lot of people are tired of not everybody fitting in the same box. I think a lot of people are tired of trying to do the same thing as their neighbor for their health condition. And they should maybe be coming from a completely different angle, but maybe their physician only knows pharmaceuticals. So we've seen an opening door. We've seen it with vitamin D. We've seen it with omega 3s. We've now seen it with a lot of things like ashwagandha and turmeric and curcumin. And we've seen this now where people are getting handwritten prescriptions from their doctors to go to their brick and mortar health food stores and saying, "My doctor wants me to start using turmeric," or "My doctor wants me to start using vitamin D." So we're seeing it. And we've kind of
Well,
been around
sure.
long enough to see the transition that's been very slow, but sure, if you will. And I think we're seeing a big difference. And we somehow keep missing the history that is already there, that has been utilized. I had a friend that went to India and studied with a ninth generation herbal practitioner, kind of their
Wow.
medicine man from this area where he was, and he learned so much from him. And I guess the man that was teaching it was in his 90s, and he was kind of laughing, and he goes, "You Americans," and he said, "What's so funny?" He said, "You keep thinking this stuff is new." He goes, "And we've been doing it for thousands of years,
Thousands
but
of years.
but
Yeah.
but welcome aboard." And he said it was just hysterical. So to
Oh,
your
I
point,
bet.
we're seeing change, and it's a positive.
It's interesting because, as you said, and we've been around a long time and remember how it was viewed. And then over the years, I started doing some teaching, both at University of Southern California School of Pharmacy and Huntington University of Health Sciences, teaching a lot of healthcare professionals, pharmacists, physicians of different types, nurses, nurse practitioners, and so forth, and teaching them about nutraceuticals, including herbal medicine and the responsible and evidence-based use of it. And I've always been interested to see how that population of students has grown. I see certainly people who are just starting out in their education and wanting to learn something, but I've been fascinated with the fact that you've got healthcare professionals who have been more interested in learning, not just sneaking to the back of the store to get their vitamin order.
Well,
But
and to your point as well, we live at a time now. For a long time over the years, I would work with doctors and physicians, and I'd be lecturing at hospitals, and they would come up to me after and say, "My wife is going through this right now, and I don't want to use their traditional medicine. Can you make me some suggestions or something that we could at least do some research on, endometriosis, or she's got hormonal imbalance, and we don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
to do the synthetic hormones, we don't want to do these things." So we've been seeing little bits of it, but now it seems like it's a little bit more out front. It's a little bit more direct. Because I remember having vitamin D on the bottom shelf in the health food store in the
Yes.
early 80s. You want to know why? Because they told us if they're using a multiple vitamin, you can't talk to them about vitamin D because it's toxic. And you know what was next to the vitamin D? Fish oil and flaxseed oil. Now, today, 4 decades later, they've got their own sections, and the doctors are doing blood tests for both omega 3s and vitamin D and making recommendations. So it's just interesting. There is a big progression for you.
There is. It's so funny you mentioned that because I don't even remember how many years ago, I was out driving somewhere and I was on my cell phone with Mel Rich. You remember Mel Rich?
Of course.
And he was saying, "Gene, I think we need to do a higher potency vitamin D." He says, it's becoming popular. And that was just on the cusp of people starting to use it. I'm like, really? I said, it's fat soluble vitamin. Do you think people are going to get too much? He goes, there's some stuff saying that we need more. And I said, I'm going to have to look into that. And I remember some of these things growing like crazy. Now, on the point of herbs, one of the things you mentioned is, some of these things have been around for hundreds or thousands of years, some of these herbs. I'm just wondering, what do you think? How many herbs do you think have been sort of commonly used around the world for hundreds of thousands of years? What are some of the most, how many herbs would you say? What would be your guess if you were to venture a guess?
I mean, I would say a good couple dozen for sure, that are
Yeah,
like things in the limelight, the things that have been being used or talked about. And then many of them, probably a lot less, but still continuing to be utilized, maybe a go-to per situation kind of thing. And then, of course, we have all the preventive things, that sometimes fall in the spice category, like paprikas and corianders and,
sure.
garlic and onions and things like that. So I'd say probably a couple dozen, everything from turmeric and boswellia and, those kind of things. There's a lot of
Sure.
them that are out there that have been very commonly used. And it's funny because we in this country have kind of grown into a situation where we utilize herbs as the last stop on the train or the caboose rather than the other countries. They're the engine at the front of the train. That's where they start with their herbs and their medicine, and they only go pharmaceutical because everything the natural way that they know and learn have not been effective. And sometimes there's a combination of there's a gentle melding of the fields.
So now that we're talking a little bit about herbs and we've talked a little bit about
Hmm.
regenerative farming,
Hmm.
I got to think and ask the question. It would seem like, but I'd like your input on this. Are regenerative grown herbs better, maybe either more potent? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say absolutely, definitely, but I want to throw these quotes in real fast if I can. I think this is
Yeah.
important. This is something I read, and like a couple months later, I was brought on for this, and this is I thought was interesting. Soil erosion around the world. We have about 60 years left of our topsoil because it's been blowing
Wow.
away. Also, our ecosystem collapse. Our insect populations have declined 57% since 1989.
That's
Bird
crazy.
populations declined by 1/3 over the last 10 years. And they say one of the main things is pesticides.
Sure.
So yes, I really do think that one of the main things that we should be focusing on is things like potency. We know that the potency of an herb is largely determined by its environment. Regenerative farming kind of ensures that herbs are grown in I guess we could call it an optimal condition without the use of synthetic chemicals, natural composts, natural fertilizers, along with maintenance of the soil, contributing to increased concentration of the active compounds within these herbs. That means whether you're using it for culinary or you're using it for therapeutic, these herbs are giving you significant benefits. And also, if you're using them in your cooking and culinary, they're also going to have significant flavor as well.
I was
And
going to
we're
say, I bet they'd have better flavor.
and also regenerative farming tends to have longer shelf life to the herbs that are grown there.
Now
The plants are
that
stronger,
makes sense.
more resilient, stronger, translating to herbs that give us better quality for a longer period of time. And I think that that's really important, both for the suppliers of the bulk herbs and also the consumers. Being able to have them longer, because what we all do. We go to the store, we get on a kick, we're taking our herbs, and everything's really good. And then I don't know, life happens, and we open a cabinet up, and there's three things in there that we were taking that we totally forgot about. And it's 9 months later and we're looking at the bottle for the expiration. We're like, oh, it only had like a year, so we want things that give us potency but last longer and give us the benefit for like a longer period of time. So I think that that is really, really important. And regenerative basically means we're aligned with organic principles, but we're just taking it to the next method and making sure that the final product is a benefit to the consumer, but what's left behind in the soil is a benefit to the planet.
I like that. I like that a great deal. And when I said before, that makes sense, I started thinking immediately, well, if you're doing regenerative farming principles and you're growing things in a correct way, it would seem like some of those antioxidant compounds would be present at a higher level. And if you got more antioxidants in there, you're going to maintain stability of that product for a longer period. So it
Yes.
really does make sense. It really does make good scientific sense as well as, sense from a number of other angles. But yeah, so Kokora, let's talk about Kokora for a few minutes. So you're doing these regenerative farming procedures. And we talked a little bit in the beginning about its sort of its mission, but I understand that Kokora has sort of what they call three pillars. What are those three pillars?
Well, I think we have to make sure that we're protecting everything that we're trying to do. We're protecting everything that we're trying to send. We're trying to make sure that we are giving ourselves, every availability that we should be focusing on. But the three pillars are basically regenerative farming, going beyond organic,
Okay.
full spectrum potency, making sure that we're using everything that we possibly can use. And full spectrum is important because, you know, over the years, the pharmaceutical companies have kind of reached out and they've there's been mimicking going on with products that do really well in the natural realm, and they may try to use a leaf or maybe a root, but sometimes we use the root and the leaf and the stem and the flowers because we know that there's value in all parts of the plant. So full spectrum, doing what Mother Nature gave us in her wisdom, and also making sure that we have scientific validation.
That's
And I
number
think that
three.
yeah, it's very, very important. And I think what we have to remember also is, working in regenerative, something that we have to remember, there's something that I wanted to talk to you about, which I think is really cool. There's this thing called M&M, or mountain microorganisms. Now in Costa Rica, they call it ME.
Emmy,
And
Emmy.
it's actually a process of putting together a soil food web activator. What they do, and I think this is just the coolest thing, they go out in the woods that surround this beautiful, gorgeous farmland with trucks, and they pick up all the dead leaves and the twigs and some of the top area of like soil, and some of it looks like it has like bacteria and mushrooms, and they throw it all in these trucks, and then they take it back to the farm, and what they do is they mix rice semolina with it, and
No.
molasses and coffee grounds and yeast, and they mix this all together and they make this kind of gelatinous, kind of wet, moist, icky kind of stuff. And then what they do is they fill up these giant 55-gallon bags. Now imagine this 55-gallon bag looks like a 55-gallon tea bag. So it's full of all this stuff that's oozing with flavor and yeast and all this stuff. They seal it and they put it into a 200-gallon tank for 2 weeks. It's like tea. It leaches out all of the benefits. And then what they do is after 2 weeks, they take the bag out, like you're taking your tea bag out, squeeze everything out, and then they use a foliar system. And the foliar system they take out and they spray the farm, they spray the plants, they spray the soil. And it's also the foundation for many other things like natural insecticides, natural fertilizers, things, but that's their foundation. And I just thought it was really interesting to be able to see what they're doing because you want to use something. And obviously bugs are great. You want to enhance the bugs. Some places they bring their steer and cattle in there to naturally fertilize the
Fertilize,
soil.
right? Sure. Why not?
And I think the main reason we don't use a lot of livestock is because the ground cover there is there as a protector to hold moisture. So if you brought the livestock in, they're going to be eating the ground cover. So I think the great idea is to use things that enhance the value and open up the soil and create these crevices and these areas where roots can really kind of work down. Now, if you've ever seen clay soil, you have to think of like
Oh,
platelets.
yeah.
It's platelets are piled on top of each other and nothing is getting through it. It's hard as a rock. So what we want to do is you want to have the bugs, you want to have the bacteria, you want to have that soil web so that everything kind of makes spaces so roots can work their way down and tap the water. Because people, once the soil looks dusty, there's plenty of water usually farther down, but the roots are not getting there. We're trying to ensure better water, better nutrient, better crops, and better soil.
As you're talking about this, a vision came into my head of an area of our backyard. My wife is an avid gardener, and she's got a compost area. And in it goes some of the same things you're talking about, coffee
Hmm.
grounds, all kinds of stuff. And my son has a guinea pig. And when he
Hmm.
cleans the cage, he takes and she says, put it in the compost pile, natural fertilizer. And she mixes all this stuff up and any old vegetables, anything that, and we have this compost pile. And it really is amazing. And sometimes we ended up with like some seed of a plant or something. And out of the compost, we'll start growing these amazing pumpkins or something like
Hmm.
that. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think about that and I think how awesome that what you're describing sounds a lot like somebody who's doing a amazing like compost on steroids kind of approach, where you're putting all that stuff together to create just a better growing environment for the plants. That's exciting. I think that's an awesome way to do it. I'd love to taste some of the plants that come out of that soil. I bet they're
Oh well,
fantastic.
I'll take care of you. Yeah, but the wonderful thing is, Rick Scalzo is one of the kindest, most intelligent people that I've had the pleasure to work with. And, I have been a silent stalker of his for well over 30 years. And I never had him on my radio show for whatever reason. And he's been on my podcast twice now. And when you watch his passion, I'm very passionate as well. If I love something, I'm going
Yeah.
to talk about it. And that's just who I am. I get excited about crazy things. But when I'm getting excited about something that's going to make a difference for the people that I know and the people that I don't know and the people that I'm touching that I may never meet through media, you want to make sure that you stay excited. But his passion is very strong about really protecting the planet and helping to preserve the planet and doing little things that we can do, like protecting our topsoil and, enhancing what we're growing and making a difference. I watched a video, they were harvesting passion flower down there, and
Ah,
everything's harvested by hand, and they have lots of people that work down there. He takes care, almost all the locals down there, they take great care. They're wonderful people. And there's actually a couple other farms that are down there that are now turning regenerative, and they're going to be helping us to grow as well. But Rick said something the other day that I thought was amazing. He said the guys don't like doing the harvesting. He goes, the women love doing the harvesting. He said, and they do it with love. They cut these passion flower and they're just holding the plants, and you feel all that love kind of going into the plants. And from there they go into the washing rooms, and after there they go into, they have to dry on, and then they go into the either cut and sifted, or they go into the powdering rooms. But it's a huge, gigantic, incredibly beautiful, like just a venture down there. I'm looking forward to heading down to Costa Rica and seeing
I
it.
bet you are.
I want to sit in the dirt and do a podcast sitting in the dirt,
That would
to be
be
able to
awesome.
my hands in the dirt and just feeling the energy of the soil there. And, I think it'll be fantastic. But I'm really loving this because it couldn't be more timely with
So,
the world. And it gives me something to sink my teeth into and be passionate about.
you've always been passionate to a new source of passion, but as you're describing this, I'm thinking, I bet you the people who work there and work these farms, I bet you this is something that's really positive for them. I bet you this is, I bet you those people are treated well.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
know anything about the people who do the farming and do the work for your farms down
No,
there?
I don't, but I know that they're absolutely, and Rick is, of course, he's out there with them when he's down there all the time, because he's back and forth, because he's there and then he's back in North Carolina, then he's back, and then we're in Arizona because they have the Rick Scalzo Institute of Technology. It's a Sonoran medical school in Arizona, and he put together this amazing, amazing. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and they are doing so much research on so many different levels and creating amazing feedback on herbs and sustainability and how long they're lasting in the blood and how long people are getting benefits. And you'd be all over this. And because it's just it was like a whole day of nerding out with chemist and biochemist and stuff, and I was just like, oh my. I mean, it was just it was absolutely amazing. So like I said, he's there with the people all the time, working with them and conversing with them, and they love what they're doing. And a lot of them are very passionate about it, and a lot of them are been born and raised there. They understand the soil, they understand the climate. They know that every day at 3 o'clock the clouds come in and it starts to rain. So I mean, they understand all of that. And this is the most beautiful farmland you've ever seen. It's over 100 acres, and it's unbelievably spectacular. It's spectacular and just amazing, groundbreaking.
So Kokora is a new company essentially,
Yep.
and so when does the products that you're producing, when do they start coming to market?
I'm actually going to be at Soho coming up in a couple weeks. So that'll be great. And the first 5 products will be launching sometime in late September.
Ah,
And the first 5 are actually, I was going to tell you what they're about.
yeah, tell me.
The first one is they're powdered. The first ones are powders. And these
Yeah,
are amazing because I love the versatility of a powder because you can do a smoothie or yogurt or applesauce or pudding, or you can just mix it in with water. You can mix it with juice or however you want to do it. But the first one is called Roasted Kokora Lift. Which is basically our version of something for energy and digestion with no caffeine. So that's
nice.
amazing. The immune power is going to be a daily immense, like immune enhancing, immensely full of great herbal products and nutrients. You've got ashwagandha in here, and ashwagandha is kind of the star of all of these, as well as some of the super mushrooms that are in there as well.
Yeah,
The golden milk bliss is going to have ashwagandha, but it's also got turmeric and holy basil and ginger. To me, this is the one that I'm going to drink in almond milk warm at night
yeah, for
because I think it's going
sure.
to be really, really soothing. The next one is the Adapt and Thrive. This is energy and resilience and stress balancing. It's got cordyceps and ashwagandha and amazing things that you can take every single day. And then the last one, 7 mushroom mocha, which I think is going to be a beautiful combination. This is certified organic turkey tail, reishi, lion's mane, shiitake, maitake, chaga, and cordyceps. And it's got
Wow.
natural cacao in there. It's got a creamy taste to it. And that's another thing. People are still learning about mushrooms. You go to parts of the world, they've been using, adaptogenic medicinal mushrooms forever.
Oh
And
yeah.
over here, you stop people in Times Square and you say, what do you think about mushrooms? And they're like, oh, I like it on my Philly. I like it on my pizza. I
Yeah.
like it on my salad bar. And I traditionally was that way. I mean, I didn't really know and understand the intricateness of
Oh my
the
goodness.
mushroom world. It's phenomenal.
It
And the
is. I
more
mean, there's been fantastic research on mushrooms. I've written a lot about it, and I've used it in a number of formulations. And there's some really cool materials out there. And now you're going to be able to contribute to that that coolness by producing some new materials, new mushroom materials. That's awesome. It sounds like you have so many interesting things coming out. So you have that's the first 5 products, and
Mhm.
when do you think those are coming out again? What
These are
month?
coming out in September, the first 5 powders.
Wow, so
And
just
then
around the corner.
first quarter of next year, 16 of the single rock, which is basically regenerative organic certified herbs, are coming out in capsules. And we also have some
Oh,
blended combinations. That'll be the next 16. And then later in the year, we'll have the next 12 to 15 that are coming out. There'll be a total of 41 products in the line.
wow. So and the ones that are coming out in capsules, are those going to be veggie caps?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that makes sense.
Glass bottles.
Glass bottles, veggie caps. Awesome. Yeah, that sounds very, very cool. That's exciting. I mean,
Very
regenerative
excited.
farmed herbs that
Mhm.
just, it's a new angle. So, which kind of also leads me to ask the question from from the standpoint of a business advantage. What would you say are some of the business advantages for companies that are interested in selling these products?
Well, I think that we live in a world where impatience has become a personality trait. And everybody wants to have, I'm guilty. If I could open a magic wand franchise, I'd be opening one tomorrow to wave
Yeah,
the
yeah.
wand and make everything better. 30 pounds less, no wrinkles. I mean, with a magic wand, yes, of course. I'd be my first customer. I'd be waving all day long. But the thing is, our impatience level comes about, I think, because so many times we've tried to do things and we didn't prepare well, we didn't ask questions, we didn't make sure we did our research, and then we ultimately failed many times. I've failed at many of the things I've tried in nutrition over the years because I didn't do my homework. And then once I started doing my homework, I get the aha moment and things make more sense. That being said, I think that today, with that impatience level, people need to feel something a little bit faster, feel something a little sooner, see a change, see a difference, make a change. And the idea that Rick has, and I've been on the same philosophy for a long time, is to front load a little heavier on the dosage and use things that have more absorbability, better digestibility, better absorbability to the point where you get it in your system better and faster. So by doing that, people feel something sooner and they're overjoyed that they're feeling something sooner, and it keeps them on course long enough that they can actually start to make a difference. Because I think when you try to skim on nutrients or use vitamin or herbal dust in your products, people are not going to see it. And I've learned over the years that people want to know 5 things about herbal supplements and nutritional supplements. What is it? What could it possibly do? When should I take it? Can I take it? And how much is it? And I think a lot of people want to go that way, but most people are like, I'll try it once. If I don't see mountains moving and oceans parting and the skies
Yeah,
opening
yeah,
up,
yeah.
I'm not going to do it again. So we want to add to that first group of people that are like, wow, I can't believe how quickly I'm feeling this. And that's a philosophy, front loading at the very beginning, getting something that's more absorbable, a little bit more potent, actually a lot more potent, and seeing a difference. And I think that's going to work on the impatience personality trait that so many of us have adopted.
That's awesome. I'm not even going to ask what the advantage is for consumers, because I think in many ways we've covered that. People who are using it are likely to get a very good results because it's grown with regenerative farming principles. And so I think that I'd like to just take a little curve here, and I wanted to take a moment to talk just a little bit about your Honest Health podcast, which I was on recently, and I've seen
Yes.
you have so many interesting guests. I'd like you to just tell us just a little bit about your podcast, what you're trying to do with that.
Well, for 42 years, I was able to work with some of the best minds in the industry, and
Yeah.
it was amazing. And I was able to launch hundreds of companies very beginning, and some companies that have been around a while, we decided to give them a relaunch and make them more visible and really get their message across, because not everybody has definitely got the gift of gab like me. And but I loved every minute of it, and I was able to create amazing relationships. But I think I took it as far as I could. And radio has changed,
It
terrestrial
has.
radio. It's not the same thing anymore. People want to do things on their time schedule when it works for them, what's convenient, when they're driving, when they're on the treadmill and, that kind of stuff. So I ended the radio show. It took me 11 months to push the button. I don't know why it took me so long. I mean, I was ready to go. I had my logos, I had everything ready to go. Finally, my producer called me and he goes, "We're pushing the button." I said, okay, fine. So I did some interviewing and we started. And I'm releasing 2 podcasts a week. I'm hoping to go to 3 and then move myself to 4 podcasts a week. I'm bringing in company founders, physicians, formulators. I'm also bringing in professional athletes. I'm also going to have entertainers. I want their story. I don't want to talk about your sport and I don't want to talk about your singing. I want to talk about what you do behind the scenes to bring all yourself and stay healthy and stay on the road and deal with traveling and paparazzi and stress on the road. How do you deal with that? We want to know. We already love you, but maybe you can give us some pointers coming from a different point of view. And I want interesting people on there. And that's kind of what I'm going for. That's why I had you on there. You bring so much to the industry and continually bring things to the industry. So I wanted that viewpoint. I let my guests talk. I want to hear them. I don't do commercials during my podcast. I just don't do it because I want to get and I did my radio show the same way. I mean, we would talk for 53 minutes, because I wanted everybody to be able I wanted them to get the most out of these amazing people that I already knew how amazing they were. And I wanted my guests and my listeners to be able to know as well. So that's kind of where we're going with that. They can find my Honest Health podcast on Spotify and they can watch the interviews on the YouTube channel. I made it easy for everybody. If you go to my website, drjeffreyburke.com, if you tap on the Honest Health logo, it'll take you to Spotify. If you tap on the YouTube logo, it'll take you to the YouTube channel. So I made that easier. I did that for my mother. She's 90 and she said, "You got to make it easy for me." So I put my my webpage on her phone. She's the only one I know that uses an iPhone and the only thing she does is talk on it. but she taps on it. And then when she wants to listen, she goes here. If she wants to watch, she goes here. So I made it easy. And a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, this is so easy. And I'm like,
I
okay.
did the same thing with my mother. She's 91, and she has a little laptop there, and I had to give her just a little shortcut link where she could just
Yep.
click on it and get to it. It's like, okay, Ma, here's where you go for this one. Here's where you go for that one.
But thank you. And I know our lives are very parallel. And I wanted to thank you for letting me mention that.
Oh
I've
yeah.
been really blessed. I've reached out to so many people that I've known over the years, and I'm like, look, I said, this is a whole new platform. I got a history with you already, and no one has said anything but when do you want to record?
Hmm.
And I'm blessed.
Isn't that awesome? So now you're going to be at Supply Side West.
I'm not sure yet. It
Okay.
just depends. I'm gonna try. Chances are yes, because I'm here in Vegas. So yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, first one will be Soho and then probably Supply Side West and then Expo West first quarter of next year.
Well, I know you're joining me for a little after Expo event, a
I
little
am.
karaoke party.
I am. It's on my calendar.
Awesome, awesome. Well, let me ask you, are there any additional thoughts that you'd like to contribute at the end of this podcast here?
I would like to say that we all need to be a lot more aware. And I think we all need to show our passion and understand that, this planet is not something that we're using and leaving. We are borrowing the planet from our children and their children and their
Thank you.
children. And we need to make sure that we are preparing, in so many different parts of our world now, we're creating disasters for future generations. But the planet, I mean, the place we live, the place we reside, the place we breathe and eat and live needs a little bit more focus and attention. If you're on your social media, whether you're on Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me, it's Dr. Jeffrey Burke, but also Kokora. You can follow Kokora on LinkedIn. You can follow Kokora Life on Instagram and Facebook. And the reason I say is because I'm putting posts there, to make sure that people are up to date on not only launches, but little tidbits of information. As you see pictures coming on there, you'll actually be able to visualize what the farm is like. It is just so green and so lush and so beautiful. And I'm not really traditional on LinkedIn. I'll be honest with you. I use my LinkedIn for getting a message across, but also reminding people of the frailness of our lives in general and how we have a tendency to focus on all the things that we think are important, and they do have their importance, our livelihood, our finances, and all that kind of stuff. But we also need to take the time to breathe and to take some me time and, get in touch with the soil. When I go back to Michigan to visit my family, the first place I go in the summer is the garden. And I will sit in the middle of the garden with a salt shaker or a spice shaker and eat everything I can reach, because
Nice.
I want to be in that soil. I take my shoes off, my feet are in that dirt. Same thing with my horses. When I go down to the horses, I am hugging the horses. I'm cleaning corrals. I want to feel that connection to the earth. It's very important being grounded in a world where we're very frazzled and we're running in circles. We need to reground and reset our priorities, because sometimes our priorities, the tiny little things that we do, end up being the most monumental things that we do in our life.
And I just want to tell people, if you go on to LinkedIn, one of the things I look forward to is whatever Jeff is posting that day, because like he said, he always posts something that to me is just a positive kind of affirmation. And it's something I look forward to reading. I get done reading what he posts and I feel good about it.
Oh,
There's
Jeff.
many posts that people have that are educational, that do other things.
Mhm.
And yours can certainly be educational, but yours are, I don't think I've read a post of yours that I haven't left feeling just a little better. So
Thank you so much. You're kind.
yeah, you're welcome. So folks out there, I want to remind you that if you enjoyed listening to Jeff, remember he has this Honest Health podcast, and you should check that out because it's a great podcast. And if you liked today's podcast, you like the experience here, please come back and watch some more of the Vitamin Professor. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much,
And
Gene. My pleasure.
thanks the rest of you, and we'll see you next time on the Vitamin Professor.
Thank you.